This is one of those great segments for me because I get to talk with a person whom I respect professionally, but even more so personally.
Thank you, Gary.
And there's a host of reasons why. One, for the work that he does exemplary work, and he doesn't seek publicity over this either. I just admire everything about him. He is an accomplished author. I must say that now, having put out 3 books. I'm sure there's a 4th in his future. Multifaceted, because not only does he write and counsel, but he's also, I don't know how this entered into this, he's going to be putting on the Delaware Beer Fest. Not the first year, but on a much larger scale. We'll get into that toward the end of the segment. My friend Dennis Carradine. Dennis, thank you for allowing us to be here on this great day because you're introducing your brand new book.
Thank you. Well, it's always good to be here with you. It's always good to be anywhere with you and all this, but especially...
At my age, it's good to be today. Anywhere.
Right.
Yes.
If we're on this sunny side of the grass, we're doing something right this week, right? No, thank you. Yeah, no, we're doing introducing Beyond the Call out to the public right now. It's actually not just on my website, but it's on Amazon. You can get it through Kindle and whatever, and it's about creating resilience within the first responder community.
What is your personal website?
So my personal website is DennisCarradine.com, so DennisCarradin.com, or you can go to the TraumaSurvivorsFoundation.org, because I also put it on that site for coverage.
Yes, and that is an organization that is so dear to you, the Trauma Survivors Foundation. Tell us about that.
So Trauma Survivors, we've been around 11 years right now. We started after my response to the Sandy Hook massacre, where we found out that, as a trauma therapist, we go in at the beginning when things occur, so a mass shooting, a natural disaster, tsunami, those type of events, and we go in at the beginning, and what we found in Sandy Hook was that people needed follow-up. And very briefly, how the foundation started, because I always tell everybody, a charity or foundation starts by one person. There's always somebody behind it. If you look at the American Heart Association, American Diabetes, there's always one person that the idea started with. So this one, I was stationed in Danbury, Connecticut, and it was the event occurred on a Friday. This was Monday morning. We had been with survivors throughout the weekend. We have been with the families. We were helping them connect and identify bodies. We were talking to the first responders. And then Monday, I was asked to go to Groton, Connecticut, to go to a company where most of the parents worked. And they wanted me to, talk to people. So as I was driving through Danbury, I stopped at a Dunkin'. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm dressed in a suit, looking, to me, I was looking sharp, right? And stopped there. And the gal behind the counter, it was co-ed, probably, 20, 21-ish, whatever it was. She was standing there, and she just had a look. The Italians, we call it mezzamort. She had that death look, like something was up, right? But I didn't say anything. And I said, I just want a large black coffee. And I was about to joke, but I didn't. I was, black like my soul. I was going to joke with her, but I didn't. I just said, large black coffee. She starts crying. And I, immediately, and all joking aside, I was like, what the hell is there a different way to order coffee up here in Connecticut, what have you? And her manager came over and just looked at me, and I said, whoa. I said, I don't know what's going on. I said, look, I'm not a reporter. I'm actually a therapist. What is happening? And the manager said, well, her nephew was murdered at Sandy Hook. I told her not to work here. I told her to go home. She said she just didn't feel right going home. So I said, look, can I get 30 minutes? I said, I have to be out in Groton, but can I have 30 minutes with her? And she agreed. We sat down and, got her to smile a little bit. Her shoulders relaxed a little bit. And what I found out was she was putting herself through college. She was underinsured. She had one of those high, deductible plans of $25,000 deductible. I asked her if she went to the group, and she said, yeah, I went to one of the groups, but I felt odd talking about it. So I ended up paying for 10 sessions with one of my colleagues up in the area for her to go to weekly just to get this through. And she went like a champ. She did it perfectly. And that was the concept of the Trauma Survivors Foundation, was how can we then translate some sessions, some therapy to our survivors that happen, after we leave. So we have a 5-session model where people involved in these large events can go to one of our network therapists and have a 5-session model. We also train crisis intervention to our first responders so they know how to work with the survivors after an event. And we also give scholarships because sadly, we have what's called the graying of psychology. It's all us shrinks are getting way too old right now. So we give scholarships to our college seniors to move on to graduate school to get them to do the work.
That is remarkable. And I have to ask you, did you ever follow up with that young lady?
Oh yeah.
To see,
oh yeah.
And how was
she? Still do. It's funny. She got so invested within mental health. She ended up going to University of Connecticut. She went to UConn. She had finished up so we're 11 years now. She is a licensed clinical social worker now.
Isn't that something else?
She's a cool person.
The story that you told me is not atypical.
No.
In your profession.
No.
And as we're here today for your book signing, you relate a lot of stories to the audience. And I was a teacher for many, many years, and I have a few stories, but nothing like what you go through probably in a month. How do you deal with this? And I have to ask you this: How do you divorce yourself from bringing this home, or do you bring this home?
That is a great question. Great question here. As we're sitting in a winery right now for the book signing, it's so a lot of it is you're trained to do it. It's a job, right? So when you look at the job itself, as anybody can kind of switch roles, right? I always call it, you take off your therapist suit and you put on your home sweatpants, right? And you get home and you want to decompress. It becomes your safe zone, right? So the stories are there. You also have to keep in mind, my entire life is about secrecy, is that we hold on to all the stories based in the confidentiality law. So for me to go home and talk to anybody really about, outside of certain stories that I know I could talk about. I can't talk about patients. I can't talk about certain things. So somewhere along the line, I decompress with the thought that when I leave the office, I leave the office. Now I'm on call 24/7, but when I leave, I leave, and I literally do the home sweatpants, right? So I'll do the business suit or the business casual at the office, but when I get home, what was the TV show, The Goldbergs, where the dad walks in and immediately takes off his pants? I go home and I literally change the clothes, and that's kind of that switch, right?
Your wife is in the medical field as well.
Nurse practitioner.
Is she a help to you in some ways?
It's translatable because I know that I could speak to her and she speaks my language, but she also is bound by confidentiality. But it's funny is that I think we allow each other, and I think even my family does that, we allow the breathing room. I'm allowed to be dad, I'm allowed to be son, I'm allowed to be father, I'm allowed to be about those different things when I get home.
Now you have a little girl
who
was about 2.5 years
almost
old.
three in July.
3 in July. Well, she's 3 going on about 20, I would say, from what I see posted online.
God bless her. I made
her.
the joke earlier. My son, my 26-year-old, is an IT engineer.
Right.
My daughter, my 22-year-old, is graduating with biotechnology. And the 2.5-year-old people always ask, what's Deanna going to be? And I said, maybe a dictator of a country at this point. She's remarkable.
Is she aware of your work as much as a 2.5-year-old can be?
Yeah.
I mean, does she know what Daddy does when he leaves and goes to the office?
It's funny. She'll come out and she'll say, because mom works at Bryn Mawr. She works at a hospital. So she says, Mommy fixes boo-boos. And then she'll go, Daddy goes to work. and then she'll say, I want to go to work. And that means she wants to come to the office with me. And so cute as a bug.
That is absolutely amazing. You are such a giver. And you talked about the scholarships that you're willing to give. And I have to ask you, do you follow up on those people? How are they doing? Are they completing their studies and moving out into the professional world?
Absolutely. Well, you found, we're very selective. Very, very selective in who we give the scholarships to. It's not, and again, when I say, when I say selective, it's going through our criteria. So we have a criteria on our website. You go through it, and if you meet that criteria, it's there. We obviously will give precedence to first responder children, healthcare children that are going into the field. But it's basically they fill out the form and do it. But because we're so selective, we also get to know these people, and we get to know most of them. And over the 11 years, we've had several that have gotten the scholarships that have gone on to the mental health field. We actually have a 100% move on rate, if that makes sense, where they have gotten into the field.
Now that's unheard of. That is unheard of. I've never heard of anything like that in the past. That's absolutely amazing.
That's also being that selective. It's like you don't want to take the chance of, giving $1,000, $2,000 to somebody with that chance that they're, going to go to the racetrack or something.
No,
with it.
I understand. Now you talked earlier about, again, that very touching story leading to the Trauma Survivors Foundation. What was it in your life that led you to decide that this is what I wanted to do for a living? I hope it's not too personal, but was there actually an incident maybe? Or
not even an incident. It's funny. I got into my undergrad very strictly to do pediatric work. I wanted to be a pediatrician. I met my sophomore year in college. I met two of my mentors. I met Dr. Pat Krantz and Dr. Christina Fieser, that if there were any cool psychologists in the world, these two were the coolest psychologists at the time. And I started learning about the science of psychology. And I was already a volunteer firefighter with that. I had my own experiences of whatever, little trauma and tragedies within my world, but nothing that pushed me in that direction until I met them. And then I was hooked. I was absolutely fascinated with the science of psychology. And so with that little bit of knowledge, then I gave up on my medical career and decided I'd go into the counseling profession. By the time I got in for my master's, I started working with the Philadelphia Fire Department's EAP, met another mentor, and just went from there. It literally just hooked me. It was fascinating to me.
Let's get into the books again a little bit. Now, the current release again is called?
It's Beyond the Call.
Beyond the Call. And prior to that, you released e-version books.
Yep.
Which I guess were earmarked to help first responders,
right.
Firefighters, everything that falls under that umbrella. You brought up at your event here today, at your book signing, some absolutely terrifying numbers relating to how long these people live.
Yeah.
Can you share some of that with me? Because I was blown away by the average male, you said, lives
78 years.
Live to be 78 years old, which means I have 3 or 4 years left, I guess, but hopefully. But tell me, relay some of these numbers to me that scare me.
This is, and we have to also understand that these numbers have been unchanged since we started the numbers 30, 35 years ago. So the average male police officer in the United States, their average life expectancy is 55. So we are literally talking 23 years difference than their predecessors, their quote-unquote normal predecessors. Firefighters make it to about 58. Paramedics and EMS make it to about 61. Those are hard numbers. Anybody out there could do a Google. It's not, these are not made-up numbers or whatever.
No, and the margin for error doesn't apply to this. I mean, that's too great of a difference.
It's way too great of a difference. The top two causes of a first responder death is cardiac arrest, suicide. Mm-hmm. Those are the top two. Cardiac arrest, stress, and anxiety.
Absolutely.
That's what the jobs are, and then suicide, if we look at the rates of suicides, we fail to give proper rates because we look at on-the-job rates versus off-the-job rates. When you're on the job, it could have been an accident. We don't know what happened, blah, blah, blah type of thing. Off the job, we don't take supported rates for that because ultimately when you're off the job, you're off the job. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing that a high increase in numbers with that. Very, very similar to our veteran rates of suicide.
Is that right?
Yep.
The veterans. Wow. You probably don't have these numbers, but any difference to if a person is in combat, if a soldier's in combat?
Huge difference between non-combatants and combats.
Right. Yeah, it has to be.
Huge difference. We teach, so I also teach for what's called the crisis intervention team. Mm-hmm. So we have what's called the veterans response team, which is all police officers. And what we find numbers-wise is that the the combatants will actually go after the non-combatants just within, not even like friendly banter, but it's almost this anger level. Like, you haven't been through what I've been through as a veteran. So the VRT team came out to address those type of issues and very much to train the officers to speak to veterans in crisis. Yeah, pretty wild.
Amazing. First title that you released was
Own Your Bullshit.
Own Your Bullshit. Okay. Now, that's a hook. Right
That is
there.
a hook. It is a
Right?
hook.
And that was, did you go to a publisher on that, or did you go to, you went to
I went
Amazon?
to an editor and
Okay,
then went
editor.
to Amazon with
Okay,
it.
so what did Amazon say when they saw that title?
So they immediately kicked it back and said, "What do you mean by this title?" And so I basically had to write a book for a book and tell them, and then they put it up there. So you can go to my website, or you can go to Amazon Kindle and actually download Own Your Bullshit, which is, pretty strictly, it's a 30-day transformative program. It started with some things that I had to take care of in myself, but then translated it to everybody else. Basically saying, like, if you do one thing every single day, in the next 30 days, you're going to be a completely different person.
Was writing that book therapeutic for you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When you step back and you make the changes in yourself and you in a sense own your own bullshit, you take accountability for your life. When you start reflecting back and you read it, you're like, yeah, I did that. And it affirms that belief to keep moving on.
Mm-hmm. Now, without getting into personal things, you and I have had the same
Yeah, we have.
surgery,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Did you then take stock of yourself, what you were doing, your lifestyle, maybe your eating habits,
Oh, yeah.
sleeping habits, and so on? And did you make changes?
I did.
Obviously, I know the answer to that. But,
I did, and it's funny when you look at it, and especially how I went through the transformation with it. We both had, an aortic valve replacement.
Correct.
We both have the moo-moos in us, right? The moo-moo valves.
I
Right?
have my own that was sewn up.
God
I
bless
didn't.
it. I got bovine.
That's
so,
right.
so this is why I like milk too much, right? Whatever. But so when I did that, it was like, look, we have to have the ability to do something for myself, and part of that journey was like, look, get your weight in check, go work out, take walks, and it's funny because you don't realize how sedentary your lifestyle is until you have one of these catastrophic events. And so in the past, since October, I've lost 45 pounds.
Wow.
I'm walking every day. I'm working out, eating right. I'm writing goals down every day. I'm writing journal. I'm doing everything that I'm preaching about. And I'm not doing it in a way that, motivational speakers will tell you, own the dragon inside, rah, and all this stuff. It has nothing to do with that. It's really do the practical things every day to get you to where you need to be.
Oh, that's remarkable. And I know, and you're doing great. And I'm so happy to see that. I really am, absolutely. I want to move on. Allie Robinson is here with me today. I don't want to put her on the spot. I know she's going to chip in with something a little bit later on, right?
Yes.
I want to get into, talk about a whole other, we take this out to left field, and that's the Delaware Beer Fest. Delaware Beer Fest is not new. We have to mention that because it has existed in another form at another location.
Yep.
But the Delaware Beer Fest is going to be taking place this year on Saturday, October 5th.
Yep.
And you're going to have two sessions. It's going to be some morning drinking, 11 a.m., I'm saying 11 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. and then 4 to 8.
Yep.
So, but you're moving, Dennis, this is what's so exciting to me. You're moving to a brand new location.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Delaware Beer Fest.
So this is our 8th Beer Fest. So coming up October will be our 8th. We started at Bellevue Park. We started at the Figure 8 Barn, which is a 19,000 square foot personal horse barn to the DuPonts, now turned, state park, which I personally would love to own just a barn that's 19,000 square foot, but whatever. So we've had it there, and we've had such a lovely time up there, and it's been great. But truthfully, and pardon all the pun, but all puns intended, we wanted to knock it out of the park this year, and we're putting it at Frawley Stadium, Daniel Frawley Stadium, home of the Blue Rocks, on October 5th. And we're having two sessions. It's funny, you're going to start the day with mimosas and Bloody Marys at 11 a.m., and then you're going to have close to 200 different offerings. Beer, wine, spirits, meads, ciders, and what have you.
That is amazing. And as we know, laws from state to state vary in terms of putting on a festival.
Yep.
Delaware is I believe, a lot more liberal than what I'm dealing with in New Jersey.
Yeah,
In
oh,
fact,
absolutely,
I'm being very
absolutely.
polite there. But
Absolutely.
you are able to bring in other beverages besides beer. Now, you've got some of the big hitters coming in, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing Big Oyster, Twisted Iron, Sam Adams.
Yep.
Who doesn't know them? Dogfish. If Sam Adams comes, Dogfish has
Dogfish
to come.
automatically has
Right,
to.
exactly. And my friends at Swedesboro Brewing. We're in
Oh,
Swedesboro right now, but
they're so
Marvin
much fun.
Bowe is just remarkable.
So
At
much fun.
Swedesboro Brewing.
So much fun.
And your home brewery, I guess, Belfont.
Belfont Brewery is going to be there. We're going to have two. We've had them now for, I think, 4 years running now, maybe 5 years running.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Big Oyster Bar Pavilion, and we have the Belfont Brewery Pavilion. Where with both of those, if you get the VIP tickets, you actually get 2 free tickets for full pours from Big Oyster or Belfont.
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah, not like you'll need 2 big pours,
right,
but
right,
you'll get
exactly.
2 big
Yeah,
full
with all
pours,
the,
yeah.
and there's going to be food, entertainment, the whole thing.
So we're keeping it in line with the ballpark theme. So we're going to have hot dogs and peanuts and Cracker Jacks and chicken fingers, and whatever you're going to get at the ballpark is going to be from the ballpark.
And that is a beautiful stadium too. I've been there to
gorgeous.
see minor league games.
Yep.
Free parking, of course, which is
Oh,
always
yeah.
a bonus as well.
10,000 free parking spots that you can pick up. Yeah.
And I want to mention that site is DelawareBeerFest.com.
DelawareBeerFest.com.
And check that often because that's constantly being updated as new vendors
Yep.
are coming in, right?
We have, if you go onto the website, you go under the 2024 brands. I think just the past 2 weeks alone, we've added like 20 different breweries and so forth. We have 2 moods coming. The one that I think is just fun is Bitchin' Kitchen. Or
Yeah,
Bitchin' Kitten that's coming down.
I called them Kitchen the first time
Kitchen,
also.
yeah,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. I met them for the first time last week.
They are
in Philadelphia.
They are a great brewery that's getting out there. 2 Moods is doing all the vodka seltzers.
Right.
Fantastic stuff. Obviously, things like Stateside, the different wineries. Obviously, Wagon House Winery is going to be there. So again, check back often. And then we're also putting our entertainment up there. We'll put our different sponsors, our different folks that are involved. We have a media package that's going to come out that we're going to announce soon. That we're going to be with different radio stations in the area. So we're wanting to make the 2024 Delaware Beer Fest something really, really special.
Oh, this is going to be remarkable. Allie, I'm going to throw this over to Allie Robinson. Don't give me the eyeball, because I know you have some notes written down there, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So go ahead and ask.
Thank you, Gary.
That is a question. The look she's giving me right now, I mean, the grass, we talked about passing away. Grass is going to be my roof pretty soon, I think.
Hi, Dennis. It's
Hi
nice
there.
to see you again. I was here listening and inspired and wanting to help your organization.
Oh, thank you.
So for those who are willing to help and who has the time and the resources, what can they do?
Oh man, that great question, because there's so much that people don't realize what goes into a 501c3 doesn't go into a foundation. We need that help from somebody sitting on the board with us, to somebody sending out emails, to somebody sending out flyers. We always joke about the best nation in the world is donation, but you have to look at what a charity is. Right now we're in. And again, I am very much an apolitical person, meaning I don't get into politics. It's not my job, right? But we're in a tough economic time right now. And what's the first thing that people stop doing? Well, they stop going to the doctor because they're not going to pay
Stop
the copay.
taking care of themselves, yeah.
And then they stop donating to charities, because ultimately, if I don't have money to fill the tank of gas, then why am I going to give you $20 or whatever? So we do joke around with it, but we ultimately just need people to spread the word and say, hey, they need money. Now, on that side, we also need therapists to help us out. We need first responders to train. And, even if we go to the Delaware Beer Fest, we need people to pour beer. We need people to take tickets. So there is a plethora of things that could be done with any foundation, but with ours very specifically, there's a lot that could be done. You would just go to the TraumaSurvivorsFoundation.org, and if you are very specific, if you're like Gary and you just want to go to the Beer Fest and say, I want to help out at the Beer Fest, right? And he loves his beer and I want to go there, go to DelawareBeerFest.com. there's an actual spot there for volunteers. We have, it's funny, we have, and as I'm thinking of the question, we have probably a dozen volunteers that have been with us since the first Delaware Beer Fest. All they want to do is come out and help. All they want to do is sit there and pour beers and talk to beer about people. And it's so much fun to see them every year.
And you need these people.
Oh my God!
You can't survive without these
No,
people.
No, you need them all, And so I as who I am in the world, I thank God every day for our volunteers and for the people involved. Yeah.
I want to ask one final question about Trauma Survivors Foundation. You've kind of established a template in doing this. I'm wondering whether other people, other cities, other organizations, other hospitals, whatever, have reached out to you.
Oh yeah.
And have other organizations sprung up along the lines of Trauma Survivors Foundation?
It's funny. I always say, what is it? Something's flattery. What's the mimic or is something is the best form of flattery?
Yeah, imitation.
Imitation is the best form of flattery.
Right.
Is that I started seeing programs that started popping up. And they were, very similar to us. They didn't have the reach of the pool because obviously we're 11 years and all that. And then I would just reach out, just kind of like, hey man, do you need help? And it's funny because they'll call back and like, oh, we were afraid to call you because we had something kind of similar. And I was like, no. To me, it doesn't matter. I don't care if you come out and call it well, I do. It's all copyright infringement. But if you just come in and say Survivors Foundation or something like that, the reality is that you're still helping people. And we're rolling out a new program called the Trauma and Wellness Conferences. You can go to traumaandwellnessconference.org. And we're doing 10 cities in the United States where we're doing 2-day conferences for first responders and healthcare, guest speakers, keynote speakers. Our first one is actually in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, up in, Rowan College at Burlington County. Mm-hmm. We have that rolling out August 19th and 20th. And we put this conference out there, and immediately I just did a call for speakers. And we had 24 people send messages to us saying, hey, we'd love to speak for you. We'd love to do this. So I think there's people out there that really want to get involved. They just don't know how. And then there's organizations that are starting up that they want to do this work, but they're questioning themselves. So, I'm here to help whoever. To me, it doesn't matter as long as the work's done.
You're such a giving person. You really are. And I'm not just saying it to blow smoke here, okay? But you're always looking to help people, to give advice.
Sure.
Talking just about initially the young lady who experienced the trauma, you followed up with her.
Yep.
And I don't know if everyone would, quite frankly. It might be a one and done. I'm not going to see you again.
Right.
But you followed up, and to this day,
I know
her
she
status.
Is. Well, there was one, and and I could say this nicely, that I think it's the human responsibility. It's not just the therapist's responsibility, because therapy is therapy, right? It's the human responsibility. I could tell a quick story with the Pulse nightclub shooting. I was down in Pulse nightclub, down in Orlando for about a month with that. And when we got down there, I initially was asked to go to a television station that they were the reporters on the ground after the shooting. Most of them have never seen this before. And one of the reporters, it happened to be her brother, that was one of the gentlemen that was shot in the nightclub. He had survived. He was at the David Young Hospital. I think that was the system down there. So we were at a vigil probably like 2 weeks after I made the initial contact with her. And I was talking to her throughout, just an absolutely lovely person. She got me at the vigil, and she came over to me and she said, can you speak to my brother? He's at the hospital. I was like, absolutely, no problem. She goes, and by the way, my mother just got here from Cuba. I was like, oh, so we'll bring mom in. She goes, well, him and my mom haven't spoken in 7 years. And I was like, well, give me the story here. I need to know what's going on. And he said, well, because of his lifestyle, because of him coming out as homosexual, the family basically turned their back on him, and he was told to leave. And so mom hasn't talked to him since. I said, look, I have no problem talking to him, but you're coming with me and mom's coming with me. And so I got up there, And we went in, and I saw him, and he was shot in the thigh and the leg, and all this. And he was there, and I brought him in, and him and his sister had this moment, and he's like, well, thank you for talking to me. I don't deserve it, and he said all those things. And I said, wait, I'm not talking to you until I bring somebody else in. He just kind of looks at me, and I brought Mom in. He started to cry. Mom started to cry. The reporter started to cry. I was in the fetal position, I think, afterwards. But since that time, I've continued to follow up with that family. I call them, maybe every few months and just say, how are things going? You've been through this horrible accident or tragedy, but I just think it's the human thing to do. Yeah.
Alan?
And I think that's so great because, when you care, it trickles down.
Mm-hmm.
And it heals on top of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it heals some more.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard this quote once and it sticks to me. Man, which is us,
Mm-hmm.
man or woman, the highest form of creation, which is us,
Mm-hmm.
right, is the world's greatest hope and the world's biggest threat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it sticks to me, and as far as trauma goes, there's so many levels to it.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people who are traumatized just from having to reroute, in the car. You're like, oh, my road is closed, now what?
Right.
And then they're throwing the hands up and
Right.
all types of things. But there's levels to it, and I really appreciate what you do
Thank you.
and those who are alongside you.
Thank you.
And it takes one to teach one, and it teaches one to know one. And once we all know, then there's no going back.
We know. Yeah.
You
Agreed.
So,
Can
yeah.
I just add one
Yeah,
thing before I
sure.
give it back to you here? And you're right. Dennis, it's difficult to measure the stressors that are out there.
Right.
What one person gets under one person's skin is blown away by another one, brushed off by another one.
Well, yeah, the levels of trauma, if we look at it, and I like that about you get rerouted and it's traumatized. You have to look at, 3 levels of, are you traumatized, are you inconvenienced, or are you offended? And when somebody, we can obviously say somebody in a shooting is traumatized,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where somebody, maybe there's a car accident on the highway and somebody drives past and they're angry because it took them an hour to get home. Well, you're not traumatized. You're inconvenienced.
Right.
So to say that person that was in that car accident is the same as you, I think we're missing something there.
right, exactly.
And then ultimately, because somebody didn't use the proper pronoun to describe you, you're not traumatized, you're probably offended.
Right.
And so I think somewhere along the line, we took trauma and used it as a buzzword. But when you truly talk to a survivor of a traumatic event, you can very much put a definition onto that term trauma. There is no question in any shape or form, what that definition is when you talk to a survivor. It comes into question when you talk to a person that's inconvenienced.
Exactly.
You know?
And that was the point that I wanted you to make.
Mm-hmm.
Because, sometimes we go through these things, like you said, inconvenienced,
Mm-hmm.
right? So once we're inconvenienced, we're not accountable
Right.
for what we do to others because of certain things
Mm-hmm.
that may create something else.
Right.
So like I said in the beginning, it's a trickled effect,
Mm-hmm.
right? So thank you so much for explaining that too.
Absolutely. Well,
Because the listeners, I want them to know that there's levels to it.
yeah, and it's difficult. There's I always say the spectra of things, right? And when you look at those full spectras, like I've had, I in my storied career, I guess I've had folks that have come to me and I've looked at them and I have questioned, like, were you truly traumatized? Like, tell me what that trauma is about, and I work through them with what trauma and annoyance is versus being offended in something, and it seems to me there's more people offended than they are traumatized, but they'll use the word trauma. It's like, look, because somebody disagrees with you, you're not being traumatized. They just disagree with you. And let's throw out age for a second, right? As a Gen Xer, I always laugh. We grew up on, our beverage of choice over the summer as a Gen Xer was through the garden hose. That was our beverage of choice. And when I tell folks, it's not that Gen Xers are doing it differently, is that Gen Xers sometimes, I think that period of time, the latchkey kids and whatever it is, we have a different perspective on traumatization versus offense. It's almost very difficult to offend a Gen Xer. Very, very difficult to offend a Gen Xer. Where with boomers, the generation, the baby boomers, I see them get offended very easily, which people don't realize that. But they're very apt to get angry. They're very apt to get in your face. I watched a woman. We were doing, as we're taping this, we have the Wilmington Street Food Festival, and I had a woman that was a baby boomer. I knew she was a baby boomer, and on the ticket it said you got one free beer and one free beverage, which the beverage was a soda or whatever it is. So she wanted a seltzer. She wanted and the bartender had said, "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, your ticket gets this." Well, you would have thought that she just had her entire family killed in front of her the way that this woman went on. And so I walked over and I said, "Ma'am, are you okay? What can I do?" "I want," and she started up with me, and I was like, "So you seem a little offended." and I was like, "Okay, let's fix this." I see that same level of offense with now our Gen Zs, millennials, and our Gen Ys, is that they're very quick to get offended, very quick to get entitled, but then we look at that trauma aspect of it. Is it where's that difference? So if you were truly traumatized, I think you could see it. Offense, we could call it whatever it is. What it was, you could put a tuxedo on a pig, but it's still a pig.
Still a pig. Right.
It's when I don't know. I've always had that. Not that just because I'm a Gen Xer, but I've seen that distinction within that age bracket, and it's kind of wild to see it.
That's curious. Any more?
Well, out of all of your accomplishments, Dennis, and thank you for that explanation too.
That was a great explanation.
Yeah,
It really was.
because
The way you
trauma.
broke it down.
Yeah, trauma. It's different spectrums. And there's a fine line.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be used and abused and used in malicious ways.
Right.
Because we're all traumatized if we are, with whatever, especially after the virus.
Yep.
We have our levels to it, but it's what we tell ourselves.
Right.
It's what we tell ourselves, and sometimes we just need that reminder.
Right.
That everything's going to be okay.
Right.
And that's where the organization comes in.
Yep.
Because you've been there yourself. You know people firsthand. You're well known in the first responders world and realm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a trustworthy environment.
Mm-hmm.
And iron sharpens iron.
Right.
So if you haven't been through something yourself, it's kind of hard to explain and tell someone how to feel.
Right.
And suggest, Right. So that's where it comes in handy, and that's why we need each other.
Yeah. Well, it's human connection, right?
Yes.
The human condition says that our little logo is that you cannot heal. You can't heal alone. You have to heal in togetherness. Is that the human condition basically says is that we need somebody else. We're always going to need somebody else. And so if we try to do it on our own, it doesn't work. Or you develop some weird sense of yourself. We all see that, It's weaponization of words, right? So somebody that's overly confident now is always a narcissist. Mm-hmm. Somebody that's underconfident, they're a victim, and we weaponize words, but in all truth is that it's connection.
That's true.
The more connection that we have, we won't have to weaponize anything because it's just connection,
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Transparency gets the biggest healing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm all about that. Take accountability and be transparent. But it's also my Italian Catholic guilt. So if I lie to people, I'm always feeling like I'm going to hell. So.
And the importance of not being okay is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say it's to not be okay is okay, and to be okay is okay.
Just to take it one day at a time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Was there a book out years ago? I'm okay, you're okay, something like that. What was that about anyway? I seem to recall that from many years ago.
That was so. God, and we could go on to a whole other
Oh, I know,
podcast
I know,
episode about
I know,
that.
yeah.
But there were movements within the 70s, 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
and even the early 2000s. And the "I'm okay, you're okay" type of thing was based in the 80s movement of kind of like, grounding yourself and finding yourself and so forth. And then you got into the 90s where you had like Tony Robbins and all that, and,
Right.
Awaken Within. And then the 2000s ultimately said, be mindfulness, be a power of yourself. So the "I'm okay, you're okay" and all this type of stuff had come out into that, we had to really get in touch with who we are. And it was good. It was a good book, but it fell by the wayside like much of these books because they're about the individual that wrote it. Like when I wrote Beyond the Call, it wasn't about me. It wasn't me telling you what to do. It was me explaining how mental health is going to help the first responder. And these are the different versions of mental health treatment, and this is how you activate, a crisis team, and this is how you do this. And so it became that kind of guide versus where you yell at people and whatever. There's I'll do the name, but whatever, if people have ever listened to Eric Thomas. Eric Thomas is one of the most worldwide known motivational speakers right now. And he talks about him of getting up every day and not sleeping, going to the grind and giving 120%. And I listened to it, and the first thing I think of was like, I don't like being yelled at. Why are you yelling at me? And then the second thing I was like, well, everybody tells you should probably get 6 to 8 hours a night. And then I'm like, I get the message, but that's you. And he talked about what I did like. What he talked about was his wife was diagnosed with MS, so she was a registered nurse, and he said, okay, well, how much money do you make a year? And she came up with a number, and he goes, okay, well, how long until you retire? And he figured out it would be $2 million that he would have to raise over the next X amount of years for his wife to stay home. And he said, I put that $2 million in my head, and that's what I grind for. And I latch on to that. And I was like, if everybody has kind of a vision of that, then we're cool. Then you're okay. Mm-hmm. But then all the other nonsense of, drink caffeine until you die type of thing, probably not good.
So Dennis, out of all of your accomplishments, what is your most memorable experience?
The birth of my 3 kids.
Okay.
Quite honestly, you could take every certificate I've ever had, anything that I've ever done in my life, you throw it away. Mm-hmm. The birth of my 3 kids. And I get emotional about this because, having the 2 older ones, I never thought I would have my tiny human. I would never. But to me, that was mine. Being a dad, and not, being a father's one thing, but being a dad, now a daddy, mm-hmm. And when you hear that call from the room at 6 a.m, Daddy, I'm awake, you want to go,
How different are you as a parent now?
Black and white.
I think I know this answer than you were 26 years ago.
Oh my God, black and white. I am an absolute pushover now. So, but now, it's funny. I think I'm more patient. I grew up with my first 2. I was a kid. I grew up with them. And now I got this little one, and her and I was joking earlier with the group that was here, is that, what 2.5-year-old asks for Starbucks? Well, mine does. Now we don't give caffeinated things, but the reality is that she, I love being around her. I love hanging out. Her and I will snuggle together and watch Bluey, to the point where I get emotional with Bluey now. I mean, it's, just fantastic.
Your son and older daughter, did they say to you, Dad, you were never like that with us? Does that ever come down?
Sometimes. I can't wait till she's a little older and either one of them go, that's not our father. What's funny, she'll tell my daughter, she'll say, that's my daddy. And Belita goes, well, he's mine too.
Oh, that's too cute. And she is precious. She really is precious. You have 3 beautiful children.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dennis Carrier, what a great joy this was to be with you today.
Always with you guys. Thank you.
And Ali, thank you so much for your great
Oh.
questions. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. And I was listening just like everyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
To find the books again, where can we go?
You go Amazon. It's on Amazon, but it's on my website as well. Go to DennisCarradine.com.
DennisCarradine.com.
Or the TraumaSurvivorsFoundation.org.
And lastly, we mentioned DelawareBeerFest.com for the event coming up on Saturday, October 5th. Dennis,
Absolutely.
thank you so much,
Thank
my
you.
friend. Okay.
Thank you.
See you next time.